Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where emotions are still running high after the shocking debut of the Suicide Squad last weekend. And this weekend, as Free Guy hits theaters, I see many of you asking, hey, if the Suicide Squad and Free Guy basically opened at about the same, why is one considered a flop and the other considered a hit? Well, that is a perfectly valid question. And allow me to explain the answer, because that's exactly what has happened. One is a flop. Well, it's looking pretty bad for the Suicide Squad. It's you don't really want to hit something with the flop word unless you have to, but they're getting there. And Free Guy, well, I wouldn't actually, again, as I said, emotions are running high. So people are, I think people are going to extremes. I would say the Suicide Squad is a problem, and Free Guy is promising. I think that's a more accurate explanation. Now, here's a detailed one. So yes, Free Guy opened at $28.4 million. It actually topped Suicide Squad by about $2 million from last weekend. And this weekend, the Suicide Squad fell 70%. Everything's been falling around 70%, but this actually did. To fifth place. The fact that the Suicide Squad isn't even runner-up this weekend or top three is pretty bad itself. So far, Warner Brothers' highest domestic day-and-date film is Godzilla vs. Kong, coming in just under $100 million. That's got to kill them. They're like, we are so close. It's really great to be able to claim the 100. Remember when movies used to open over $100 million? It is rough out there. We're going to talk about that too. And it's unlikely now that the Suicide Squad will come anywhere close to that domestic total. We'll have to wait and see what kind of hold Free Guy has in its second weekend. But considering that if you take out the Thursday night box office is rolled into Friday. So that's what the Friday number really is. It's Thursday night and Friday. But if you take out the Thursday night box office, Free Guy actually went up 24% Friday to Saturday, which means very strong word of mouth. And it might have Jungle Cruise level holds in the weeks ahead. Jungle Cruise, another day-and-date release on Disney+, but for $30 a pop, is sailing to be one of the few films that will break $100 million at the domestic box office. So wave to Godzilla vs. Kong as it goes by. All right, now let's get back to the opening weekends of Free Guy and the Suicide Squad. Now, some of you are arguing that Hollywood intentionally lowballed Free Guy's projection to try and make that movie look good and the Suicide Squad look bad. The trades don't care. They were really rooting for, they just want movies to succeed. It's not like Disney's writing these box office reports. And also, I want you to remember, because how quickly we forget when we're upset, that we thought Hollywood was lowballing the Suicide Squad with a $30 million projection. But it didn't even meet the lowball, the lowball. Also, some of you are arguing that Free Guy is theaters only and PG-13, giving it an unfair advantage. Now, those are all reasonable points. But there are big differences between the two movies that you are not thinking about, and these are them. The Suicide Squad is a comic book movie and part of the DC brand. It's in fact a sequel or a second film because, again, one of the things the trades has talked about is a lack of clarification as to what the Suicide Squad was. Is it a reboot? Is it a sequel? I mean, it's just another adventure for them. I felt it was a loose sequel, quite frankly. What did you think? I mean, it seems pretty obvious to me. What did you think the Suicide Squad was? I mean, that to me is clearly what it was, a loose sequel. But anyway, it's part of a franchise. And all the films of DC films open big, with just a few exceptions, like the similarly themed Birds of Prey, which is why last week we talked about Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn maybe having a bit of a problem going forward. And this means the Suicide Squad should have opened closer to fellow blockbuster pandemic films Black Widow and F9, but it didn't even come close. Not anywhere close. And even worse, it's still dropping like those movies in its second weekend. If it had a better hold, I think people would feel a little better about it. Meanwhile, outside of Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds' box office numbers are actually usually pretty low. I mean, 28.4 for Ryan Reynolds would be a big deal outside of the pandemic. I mean, that would be amazing for him. Next, if you do keep Thursday night in the mix, because I want to be fair here in the comparison, Free Guy basically held Thursday, Friday to Saturday, while the Suicide Squad fell 32%. That means that Free Guy has extremely strong word of mouth, again, as we already discussed. And also I want to point out it has the better audience scores to further prove that. So what's the difference? Because I know some of you are like, well, I love Suicide Squad and everyone I know says they love it. Well, the difference is that people are being convinced to go see Free Guy who maybe otherwise weren't planning on it. Well, everyone who wanted to see the Suicide Squad went right away, which makes the movie very front-loaded, and no one else is really saying, oh, hey, maybe I'll go check that movie out. Also with Free Guy, though, I saw a number of people online say, what, Free Guy opened? I didn't know that. And that's, I think, one of the problems of so many changes to release dates, that once a studio does settle on a final release date, a lot of people aren't aware, even when we're talking about it a whole lot. For some reason, with some people, it just doesn't settle in. So I'm curious, if you went to see Free Guy this weekend, what were the circumstances? Had you planned it in advance, and was it a last-minute decision? And did you even know that it had opened? So again, that speaks to the potential longevity of Free Guy, while Suicide Squad is like dropping off a cliff. Although some of you will argue that, there is the fact that the Suicide Squad is on HBO Max, although we have no information to point to, and Warner Brothers isn't even releasing any numbers, and there's no revenue to point to because, of course, it's offered at no extra cost. All right, so Free Guy, also some of you are saying, well, hey, Free Guy also has a huge budget, so why isn't it considered a flop? Because these are still pretty low numbers in terms of recouping your investment. Again, I think that the studio is factoring the pandemic into both these conversations. But anyway, speaking of getting your money back, Free Guy still costs far less to make than the Suicide Squad, so it's a lot cheaper. And then also I want to point out that Ryan Reynolds really proved his worth as a star, and that he could not have worked harder to personally promote this film via his huge social media reach and his interviews. And his hard work has literally paid off. He announced yesterday that Disney says they want a sequel, and I've heard that too from people I know in the industry. Fox executives are, the Fox people within Disney are very happy. Disney itself is very happy. Well, on the flip side, there has been no word from Warner Brothers about the future of the Suicide Squad, any of the characters in the movie outside of Peacemaker, whose deal was already done for his show, or James Gunn, what their future is at the studio. While they were plenty vocal about it right before the movie opened. They were like, oh yeah, we're going to do tons of stuff. Now, not a peep. You would think they would say they were going to make the Suicide Squad 3 because no one would hold them to it to try and boost people going. So it's an odd choice that they didn't, because they could just say they just ultimately decided not to. So it's crazy that they feel, that just gives you some idea of how Warner Brothers feels about the whole thing. They didn't even try to do that. All right, so anyway, again, if the Suicide Squad had only had a 3 in front of it, if it had only matched Godzilla vs. Kong, the headlines and industry analysis would have been a lot kinder. If it had a 4 in front of it, through the roof. I mean, again, we were hoping for something with a 5, maybe, like best, I think with the Delta variant, people were saying, okay, maybe a 4 in front of it. That was the allowance for the Delta variant, not with a 2 in front of it. Because, a 4 or a 5 in front of it would still be significantly lower than Black Widow and F9. So that would be what would be accounting for the Delta variant and the R rating. So that's why this is such a bad gross for the opening for the Suicide Squad. And also, Free Guy's success shows that even with the Delta variant in play, there's still an audience willing to go to the movies. Now, is the size of that audience 26 to 28 million? The next 2 big theaters-only releases, Candyman and Shang-Chi, will be very important to that discussion. If they both open around that, well then, that will be wonderful for the Suicide Squad. That will be bad for those movies, but absolutely phenomenal for the Suicide Squad. If they can say, hey, that's all Hollywood can mobilize at the moment. So, we'll see. But even if that is the case, that size audience is great for Free Guy, not great for the Suicide Squad. Also, those audience scores and audience fluctuation is a huge factor in terms of steadiness week to week. Like, Jungle Cruise opened much lower, but it's going to get to 100 million because everybody's going to see it week to week. It's holding very well. And then also that reflects how it could potentially do on PVOD. For instance, I think Free Guy is going to explode on PVOD. And the Suicide Squad, I'll be curious to see how it does, because I think a lot of people who are big fans will have already watched it multiple times on HBO Max at that point. So we'll see. The Suicide Squad will hit PVOD for purchase in about a month from release, while Free Guy is operating with a 45-day window. And James Gunn still has 2 lifelines that he established prior to the Suicide Squad's release. The HBO Max show Peacemaker, and of course, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and the Holiday Special. I'm glad he signed those deals before this movie came out, or else Marvel could have gotten them on sale. Remember, I always tell you, it's important to have a couple of things already lined up before your big project comes out, because you never know how things are going to go. But sometimes they go great, and you get even more stuff. Ryan Reynolds looks like he's getting Free Guy 2 at Disney, while his Fox friends who greenlit this movie and now run Paramount are surely very eager for their new first look deal with Reynolds to get underway. So it's starting under very good circumstances. This could even help, back to Disney Marvel, his Deadpool timetable. It could help move that up, especially because they allowed him to use the character to promote Free Guy. Everyone's on a Ryan Reynolds high right now. That's what happens when you have a hit. This also helps Netflix's Red Notice, where he co-stars, coming later this year, which also features and is produced by someone else coming off of a big pandemic box office hit, Dwayne Johnson. Gal Gadot better be really good in that movie. Whew. Not only is Dwayne Johnson in talks with Disney for his own sequel, which he'll likely get, as Disney is greenlighting lavish sequel deals left and right to keep other pandemic talent from suing them. But his production company also announced this past week that they're already reteaming with Emily Blunt for an Amazon movie. Amazon, of course, don't worry. Well, it could be theaters. It could go into theaters, or it could go direct to their streaming service. Tomorrow War was a big hit for them. But still, Emily Blunt will star in the true story of the first female Pinkerton detective who opened the door for women in law enforcement. That is going to be phenomenal. What a fantastic project. I bet Emily Blunt is glad she ended up deciding to work with Dwayne Johnson, because that looks like it's going to be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. All right, elsewhere in the box office, Warner Brothers is like, that's our quote, goddammit. All right, so anyway, elsewhere in the box office, other theaters-only releases, Don't Breathe 2 and Respect, didn't fare as well as Free Guy, but they still found audiences. Respect has excellent audience scores, but its Rotten Tomatoes score, that's going to seriously weaken its awards chances. In addition to the Delta variant eroding moviegoer confidence, I'd like to point out 2 other factors that I think are emerging. 1, I tweeted about this week and I did a poll with you guys. Audiences are beginning to significantly favor premium theaters. And those premium theaters typically only show a movie for about a week before the next one comes in. Disney is very aggressive in their negotiations to make sure that they have these theaters for at least 2 weeks, maybe sometimes even 3. But the Suicide Squad lost most of its premium screens after just 1 week to Free Guy, which I'm sure also hurt them. 2, people are ruder than ever these days, and the movie-going experience has become, believe it or not, even worse. It's so bad, people are starting to say they're just going to wait the 45 days. They will wait 45 days to watch these movies at home rather than deal with rude behavior. I think that these factors, along with the Delta variant, are not only one of the reasons we're seeing lower box office openings, but such big drops in the second week, especially for blockbusters. All right, let's take a look at streaming. We're going to start off, as always, with Nielsen, going back in time to the week of July 12th. They got to get these faster. Even with its finale, the week of the finale, Loki was still no match for Virgin River. What a show! But both are still way ahead of the rest of the top 10. So they're both winners. But boy, that Virgin River. Do any of you watch Virgin River? What's so good about it? I'm genuinely curious because my interest is piqued. And with movies, no wonder Studio Canal is making a second Gunpowder Milkshake, as the film dominated in its week of release, beating out holdovers Black Widow and The Tomorrow War. But that's a very strong top 4, though, with Luca thrown in there, showing why movie theaters are having a hard time competing with streaming at home. You can either watch a movie that's either day and date or been around for a little bit, or direct to streaming. And then, of course, you have all these great shows. Like, you can wait 45 days, especially when streaming makes the wait so easy, because there's other stuff that you can watch in the meantime. Also, all 3 Fear Street movies are in the top 10, and even though Netflix didn't do any advertising and nobody really ever talked about them publicly, Netflix still made their subscribers very happy. Well, do they? They at least give their subscribers stuff to watch. Because as for Netflix this week, even though new movies The Kissing Booth 2 and Beckett are at the top, you apparently absolutely hated them. Followed by holdover new movie Vivo, whose audience score is a tad better. Over on iTunes, normally Scarlett Johansson would be thrilled to see Black Widow at the top for $30 a pop. $30 again. But a lot of other movies go to PVOD for purchase out of the theatrical shortened window, and they come in at $20. But Disney's like, no, give me $30. And people are doing it. But I think Scarlett Johansson is ultimately going to wish she'd never made Black Widow and probably will have bitter feelings about it forever, unless there's some kind of legal miracle. I do think that I can understand people wanting a piece of the streaming pie, but I don't think she's going to win under her argument of breach of contract. Because I think that obviously Disney will argue force majeure, and then they're going to sacrifice Shang-Chi to theaters only in the weeks ahead to show how bad it could have been. All right, so anyway, once again, almost all the movies are recent theatrical releases, as you can see. More evidence that more and more people are simply waiting to watch these movies at home. While Mel Brooks' 1981 comedy is on sale, and for $5, I would definitely pick that up. That's a very funny movie, one of his best. All Mel Brooks' films are great. He's not quite at that point where I think there's been like a Mel Brooks resurgence where everybody remembers how great his body of work is, but hopefully someday, maybe it's starting, that will come. And the Major League Baseball Field of Dreams game on Thursday night was a huge hit, dominating ratings and social media and inspiring everyone to check out the original movie again or watch it for the first time. They've already greenlit another game for next year. I don't know if you can repeat the magic, but hey, they're going to try. As for this coming week, The Protege will be theaters only, and don't underestimate that movie. Not only is Michael Keaton in it for some reason, wow, but it's actually directed by Martin Campbell, who is a phenomenal director. He not only directed my favorite James Bond movie, Casino Royale, and a couple other Bond films, but most recently he did The Foreigner, which is the Jackie Chan movie. He directed the heck out of that movie. He's great. Interestingly, Maggie Q was taught martial arts by Jackie Chan, so I wonder if maybe Jackie Chan helped put this whole Protege deal together. The Protege looks like fun to me. I think that will do particularly well when it hits PVOD, but let's see how it does in theaters. Then Reminiscence and Paw Patrol are day-and-date releases on HBO Max and Paramount Plus, respectively. Still, Free Guy and even the Suicide Squad should be able to take advantage of this weekend. It's a slow weekend before Candyman hits the week after. That's the next big movie. As for streaming this coming week, 9 Perfect Strangers hits Hulu on Wednesday, while on Friday, Netflix drops The Chair, more Sandra Oh boy! As well as their movie of the week, Actioner Sweet Girl, starring Jason Momoa and Isabella Merced, who was this close to being Batgirl. Oh, it's a tough business. Just keep working, and hopefully another opportunity will come her way. And that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And what do you think of the Suicide Squad versus Free Guy? And also, what do you think the reasons are for why people are going not as much to the movies besides COVID? What do you think of my 2 additional points? Share those thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.